Hey guys, welcome back to Power Within. Today our conversation is going to be about OCD and what it brings to people's lives.
Yeah, OCD, obsessive-compulsive disorder. And it's probably been around forever, but I think it's something, maybe as we've got older, it's thrown about all the time. Probably really in height in the last 20 years. People will go to the doctors for it, people have therapy for it. And CBT, one of the types of therapy that I don't overly promote, is actually one of the beneficial therapies for OCD because it's obsessive-compulsive disorder. And CBT can officially break cycles and help reprogram the brain.
That's good. Well, tell us a little bit more about CBT and what you don't like about it.
You get confused, don't you? You should go CBD, CBT.
CBT.
But no, it's cognitive behavioural therapy, and it's one of the types of therapy I feel only works at a surface level. Because it doesn't allow the client to get the space to dive into why they behave the way they do. But in terms of OCD, it allows for surface level breaking cycles. And it does exactly what it says on the tin. You can, where obsessions can get worse, by talking through them, by reprogramming why you do it, by understanding where your brain's created that sort of cycle in the first place, you can rewire it.
And that's the reason why CBT is actually quite beneficial. And there's lots of different kinds of therapies out there. What are there for certain particular disorders, really? And I think this is the one where it does work the best on.
Yeah, I think my bonnet about CBT is that you go to the NHS, you might get 10 sessions. It's just surface level. You don't get to understand why your OCD kicked in. You don't get to dive into some of the behaviours or the reasons for the behaviour. You just get to dive into the behaviour. And that's what's flooded with the NHS, which is why I think I've never really raved about it. But today we're talking about OCD, and if you were coming to me, we're probably going to do a type of CBT therapy because we're going to change your thought process. And when we share a bit about OCD today, the obsessive-compulsive disorder, people usually think it relates to tidiness, cleanliness, routine, liking things in an order, and it's way, way more than that.
But again, the routine, the cleanliness, the tidiness is a massive part of OCD as well. So although it's not the highest level of OCD, it still does overtake people's lives. We know quite a lot of people what's come to us for OCD. I had a client last week, and I think you had a client a week before, because it does work, the hypnotherapy side. Again, you do a lot of, you sometimes touch on a little bit of CBT with them, but then obviously afterwards going to hypnotherapy, because hypnotherapy is the part where it stems from, and find out where it did actually come from, and then work on from that. Where I find that more powerful. But that's because I've got more passion in hypnotherapy than therapy. But again, when people do come to you for how many times they have to do this light switches 10 times, they have to open and shut the door 10 times, it is a thing. And it's massive for them, and they don't realise where it stemmed from until you do actually work back in time, kind of thing, because they'll go, I can't remember what age I was. But then you realise then all of a sudden there's been a trigger point, a reason why they've started that. And then there might be a trauma in their life where then they've gone, that was a distraction at the time to turn the light on 10 times. And then after that, because that sort of soothed them, they continue then after to do the door, then to do like many other things. I can't remember what this other guy did, but he did certain amount of things 10 times, and that was the thing, is 10, because it occupied his mind.
And you know what? We've had some that will do it 20, they'll do it 50, they'll do it 100. And I think that's the idea of today. I joked even before earlier, I don't have OCD. We don't overly talk about OCD. But I think the more I talk about OCD, the more I think maybe I've got tendencies. Earlier on, I was looking at your top and there's no routine to it, or there's no reason for keeping me safe, or nothing bad's going to happen like a lot of compulsions out there. But I was just reading your top again and again and again. And although I know what it means because we bloody printed the thing, and you were asking me what I was looking at. So I've got maybe some obsessions, but it's not something bad's going to happen to someone, or I'm going to prevent something if I count something 10 times, because I generally don't think I've got OCD. I would definitely not say I've got it out loud. But if I've got a task to do, and I've shared this before, maybe I can't rest until that task's done, which is maybe the mildest form. I would never talk about it out loud if I wasn't sharing this topic today. But I remember a client, and I was doing hypnotherapy, and I was doing it online. I wasn't even doing it on a video, so I couldn't even see him. I couldn't see his reactions. But he had a really successful business. And it wasn't a business that he could harm people. But in his mind, he obsessed about his jobs. What if something was wrong? What if a client complained? It was stealing his life. It was stealing his time with the kids. It was stealing the time when he got home. And we did some hypnotherapy. And again, I couldn't see his reaction, so I had to just assume he went where I asked him to go. And I asked him to imagine this safe space. And afterwards we checked out, and he in his mind had gone to this log cabin. And I asked him to explain it, and he said, I was sitting on my porch drinking coffee and my kids were roasting marshmallows. And I think that's some of the pride I get from the work that we do, because he was able, forget me, he was able to transport his subconscious to a patio, like a porch, watched his kids roast marshmallows. And what his subconscious done in that moment was realise he wasn't living, he wasn't present, because he was obsessing about his job. But most importantly, he was obsessing about a job going wrong that hadn't even gone wrong. So I asked him to imagine a filing cabinet. And you guys could do this. If you've got OCD, if you've got intrusive thoughts, if you're able, I asked him to imagine a filing cabinet. And when he come home from work, file it. He's got the key. He can open it if something came up. He can pull that client's folder out if he had to revisit if there was an issue. But 99% of the time, there was never an issue. So he had no reason for this thought. So I asked him to imagine this filing cabinet anyway. And in my mind, I don't know, I imagine like a doctor's boring metal filing cabinet. Afterwards, we were checking out, and I said to him, was you able to imagine the filing cabinet? And he got really excited. He said, yeah. He said, it was like a cartoon and it had this smiley face on it. He said, I pushed it off the cliff. I didn't ask him to do that, but that is what his mind was able to do. And I remember the second session checking back in, asking him how he's been, and he was incredible. And this is the power of hypnotherapy, and we've only touched on it minor. The power of hypnotherapy, one session in, he was learning to be more present with his kids. Work, he'd come home, he would put it in a filing cabinet. And although I didn't ask him to push it off the cliff, that's what he had done. So that meant when he got home, he could have dinner, he could be present, he went back to his daughter's gymnastics. And a problem never came up, so he was obsessing about something that was never coming up. But he was able to start living and being okay with the fact that if a problem arose, he was well equipped to deal with it.
And that's like a really good scenario for most people, especially if you are visual. Some people are not that visual, especially for hypnotherapy. So like, again, when you go back to clients, I had a client who when you kind of talk about things like that, like, and I do speak to him in hypnosis, but and where are you? I'm not visual. Okay, good. That's great. And then that's when I flipped it to do the parts therapy side, where then I spoke to the part of them, what needed to like calm things down or turn things down, turn things up. And that's the way forward I went, and obviously was able to do that because that was more relevant to them. So there's so many different kind of techniques what you can go through and do. And again, sometimes people are not that visual to turn the dials up and turn the dials down. But then you, like I said to you, can speak to the part of them what's conflicting them and speak to the motivation part, how you actually want to feel. And that kind of worked for them. So there's lots of different directions. And again, if you are visual, that's perfect. If you're not visual, it's like, what am I supposed to do? And again, when people do come to you, because you can speak to them and understand where they are with it, OCD is massive, absolutely massive. And I think it does steal a lot of people.
Yeah, because for some, and we talk the extreme level, and some of our clients, but some people that we know, and some of them, the obsessions really feed into the unwanted thoughts. And some of them can be so severe and intrusive that if I don't do this 10 times or 20 times, or if things are not done in a certain order and then you have to start all over again, then somebody's going to get hurt. Almost life is going to be critical. And what happens, like a lot of things with our mind, is it's so extreme anyway that it's not going to happen. But in your mind, you make the connection, well, because I've done that 10 times, that's why we're safe. So now I have to continue doing that 10 times again because I'm going to be safe. Just like when we've talked about fears and phobias, anxiety, the way the mind keeps us safe is by avoiding something. So with OCD, let's find that connection. If I lock that door and unlock it 10 times, I know it's locked. We're not going to get broke into. We wake up tomorrow and we're safe. The probability, if I left it wide open, we're still going to wake up safe. But the connection, what the mind does, is because I've done that ritual. And again, who are you harming? It's just a ritual. You're not taking it from anyone else, although sometimes you might be. One of your clients the other week, he'll sometimes drive a mile down the road and still come back because he's not done his ritual, or he forgets that he's done his ritual. So sometimes it can be really impacting.
He's actually started to film. What else he's done is he films himself locking up, just because he gets upstairs and then says, did I do it? So then he'll watch his video back, but then even though he's watched his video back, he'll still go back downstairs and check. And I said to him, well, what's the worst could happen? What's the worst could happen if you don't lock up, or you know you've locked up? But what's the worst could happen? He says, well, somebody will break in. I went, you've got 2 really big dogs. I says, nobody's getting in there, and the dogs will wake you up before anything else. I said, the dogs know when somebody's coming up the lane. And he went, yeah, that's true.
I'm breaking it further down,
yeah. And that's it. To break things down with them is what's the worst could happen. And I get that breaking in is a massive thing. But when he's got 2 big dogs, what would hear somebody from a mile away? They're going to hear it before they're going to wake you up. It's like, yeah, true.
But in his mind, that ritual stops someone breaking in.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
And unless someone broke in after that ritual, and then he's going to change it, and this is maybe...
He won't believe that he's done that. Even though if he's opened and closed the door or locked it 10 times, if he got broke into, he still wouldn't believe that he did that. He'll doubt himself.
And take the blame.
Take the blame.
And that's it. These thoughts don't come from a place of logic. Whenever we talk about any topic or any therapy, most people aren't working from a place of logic. And it's the intrusive thoughts that take over. We're out of control. How can we regain control? Well, if I just have to turn a light on 10 times, then I'll deal with that in life because it's easier than the alternative. It doesn't sound like a lot, does it?
It doesn't. And that's the reason why people do have the compulsive disorder. But again, we need to try to wind that back a little bit, to try to take it back a few steps and see, even if you're not getting rid of it completely, just even minor just to do it minor is good.
Yeah, that guy that put his stuff in a filing cabinet and kicked it off a cliff. Like, I was proud of him that was extreme, but that just reminds me how extreme his OCD was in the first place. Like, it stole his joy, and he would say to me, I'm not present with my kids, I'm not present in my marriage, I'm obsessing about something. But he's never had a complaint, he's never had a bad job. He was obsessing, and I guess in his mind, because he obsesses, he's ready for the outcome. And the outcome doesn't happen, so he'll carry on obsessing. And in his mind, as long as I obsess, I'm in control.
Yeah.
And it's that vicious loop. And when we even talk about the cycle of obsession, anxiety, compulsion, then you get a little bit of relief, and then the obsession kicks back in. And I could not comprehend what it would be like to live 24 hours a day in that cycle, to lie in bed and think, right, I've not done this, and now this is going to happen. But we've seen it. I think hypnotherapy, I would always hands down sell for OCD and say, give your local hypnotherapist a couple of sessions, you will work wonders. Like that guy for me, he lived in Wales. I couldn't see him face to face. It was so unrealistic. I don't even know why it wasn't a video call, but it was just, I asked him to just put his phone to the side and just listen to me. So I had to assume he had gone where I'd needed him to go. He was incredible, and I think
it's somebody who just reached out, and I think he texted you, and he did call you on the off chance, and probably to have that was quite good for him, because it soothed him to realise that actually this can work, and he had a good outcome from it, and hopefully was more present with his kids, more present with his wife, more present with life, because life is very, very precious, and yet we still manage to sabotage most of our time.
Yeah, and I asked him to describe it, and everyone that suffers with OCD, whether it's mild, whether it's extreme, the symptoms will be similar but maybe varied. The culprit for OCD kicking in will vary from one to the next. But if you look at it as an average, most people will describe it as like an alarm going off in your brain, and the only way you can quieten it down is by doing that ritual, that routine. If I've cleaned my floor, well, what if I've missed a spot and there's germs, and then my kid picks it up on the leg? We all know, if we're healthily, we all know that germs can be healthy in a sense. Our immune system is built on germs. And I think when Evan was a baby, we wasn't overly cautious in a sense of germs. We had a dog, we had a cat. I know friends and family that would be like, you can't be around a dog or you can't be around the cat because of the germs. And they do. Of course they contain germs. But I always grew up thinking your immune system works better by being in company of them germs.
Yeah, even if you look at like COVID has a lot to answer for, but yet we all went into lockdown to prevent us from getting COVID. Yet as soon as we started getting, and then nobody was ill. If you remember, no one was ill because everyone wore a mask. Everyone weren't allowed to touch anything. Everyone had to sanitize their hands. But then as soon as we started going back into the real world, everybody had COVID. Because even though we all had the jabs and everything, or well, most people had the jabs and stuff, it didn't protect you from getting it. It may not have been so severe, but you did. You did get COVID. I think as soon as we opened our bar again, although everything was sanitized, the screens was up. There was like people who wore masks or people on tables. Like I think probably a week after everybody sort of had COVID, including ourselves, yet we were still sanitizing. But it's interacting with human beings, and it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing because your immune system does build up. So when you do get COVID, you're not going to get it as severe. And a lot of people are out there now, still wearing masks, still sanitizing, still keeping away from people. And then that triggers a lot of OCD because they realise, well, when I wasn't around people, I never got any like illnesses. But as soon as you are around people, you do. And we see people now on planes with masks on, sometimes gloves on, and it's a hard place. That kid, what I see, he really massively obsesses with OCD. I doesn't want to go to school, and it's a tough thing. But now he is back in school, and he's back mixing with people, and he's back mixing because realistically, he would actually implement for the rest of his life, continuing where he was. Because if he didn't go back to school, then he wouldn't really interact with other children, and then we wouldn't even be able to interact on a job.
Yeah, and I guess the OCD creates that fear, and that fear puts barriers in place to say, well, if I don't go there, I'm safe. If I don't do this, I'm healthy. If we don't touch things, we're clean. And some of the conversations we have with clients, and there'll be people out there that suffer quietly with OCD because they daren't share the label. You can break that cycle. Like a lot of things, fears, phobias, OCD very quickly. If you're out there and you suffer, if you have rituals that are taking over your life, then I would say absolutely go on a directory, find your nearest hypnotherapist, research them, because I'm not saying everyone just because they're on a directory will be fantastic, but there'll be some great ones around, and OCD can very, very quickly be removed from your daily life.
Either that or just torn down so it's not overtaking your life, because sometimes you don't want to take that away from him, because taking it away, that's always been a protection for him. And I don't think anybody who's got, like, especially severe OCD, they never want it to leave them because they always see it as a protection. So they'll always want it to be there to protect them, but not as severe. And I think even like some people do say, I've got OCD because I like things to be tidy. It's not really OCD. It's just that you like things tidy. I like things tidy. Sometimes I don't like to be tidy.
Yeah, I love things tidy. I wouldn't say I've got OCD.
But you like to tidy. I don't like to tidy.
I don't think I like to tidy, in all fairness. And I had supervision the other day and I mentioned OCD. I don't know if it's because I thought we was going to talk about it, but she said to me, do you think you've got OCD? And I'm like, no. Am I obsessive? If I've got a task to do, maybe I'll fall into a bracket. I wouldn't label myself with OCD because it doesn't take over my life. But does it probably sit heavy with me if I've not finished something? Or can I not rest until it's done? So I guess I get a little bit of a feeling for it.
Nothing to do with that imaginary
to-do list.
To-do list what you've got.
Yeah.
No?
But for a lot of people, OCD can cause guilt and shame and confusion, and the intrusive thoughts can literally sit on them. And I wouldn't say I have any of that in my life. But it is a real thing. CBT, as I say, I would be the least person to advocate CBT. But in terms of OCD, it's probably the number one therapy that is very quick to change behaviours. So I have to give it some meaning and some credit, because it is good. I think when I've shut it down before, it's because it's so surface level. And sometimes on the NHS, that's all that's offered. And I don't think it's good enough for people that need some really psychodynamic stuff, because you can't undo some of the past traumas with CBT.
And this is the thing, is like with NHS, I think they try to do as much or as best they can. So they get people trained up in therapy, but it's the quickest therapy training.
But so I always think it's quick and it's cheap. And sometimes I remember somebody saying to me once, you buy cheap, you buy twice. And he was quite well-to-do and he had money, so it's all right saying that. But imagine buying cheap shoes. They'll do the job, but they'll do the job for 12 months. They won't do the job for 12 years. So I got his logic in buy cheap, buy twice, meaning next year you're going to buy it again anyway. CBT for me is almost you deal with it cheap, you're going to deal with it twice, because CBT cannot touch anything that's not surface level. So the problem is with the NHS, and this wasn't meant to be the topic today, you treat a client with CBT, you might have 6 to 8 sessions, you're then ticked off a register, you look like it's worked. And it might not have worked, but now you're out of the system, you're now sat vulnerable thinking, well, I've had my therapy, I've got nowhere else to go, I've got to learn to manage it. And you sit with, especially CBT, you sit with it and go, well, I've had therapy, it's not done what I've asked it to do, I don't know what I expected, but it can't do that. This is me, this is who I am, I've just got to learn to live with it. And we know it can get extremely severe for a lot of people. Where'd you go with that?
And that's it. But it does do a job, CBT. So
a job isn't necessarily
the
job. So you buy cheap, you buy twice.
But that's only, again, that's if they're having CBT for something like past trauma and stuff. Because it does let you like learn how to deal with it on a surface level. But again, that's all the NHS can offer. They don't offer hypnotherapy, they don't offer the other therapies or whatever, but it is all they've offered.
But one of the reasons for this podcast in the start was to create discussion, was to create awareness that there are alternatives. And if anyone's ever going to hear us, then hear my rants. And it's not meant to be offensive. None of our content is meant to be offensive.
No.
But the surface level therapy doesn't always cut it. I will give it a little bit of accreditation for OCD, because it can change your thought process, can change your behaviours, it can dilute your rituals. If you're going 20, 30 times a day, can we make it 10? Can we make it 5? I was reading your t-shirt earlier for no real reason in my mind, because no one's going to die if I don't read it. But can I change my mindset where I don't read it? For me, that's irrelevant to my day. CBT can help in that sense.
But it's kind of funny because I never even knew that you did that.
I don't
Not
think
even
I
just
know
reading my t-shirt, but even, like you said, you read things over again.
I just think sometimes I count my steps for no apparent... Like, Evan will count his steps because he wants to know how many steps he's going. Did you go on a walk once that was like 13,000 steps or something? But
I think sometimes he's got a little bit of OCD creeping in, where we do sort of talk to him and then drop it down so it never creeps in massive. So we'll do things a little bit of a joke, but not like do things where it's serious, because realistically, if he did that constant, we probably would need to sit with him and have therapy with us.
Do some CBT.
Now, he doesn't necessarily need that, but we soften the blow on it and go, I do a little joke with him and he's okay with it. But people can, especially if they're doing it to occupy the mind on something, and they get over the certain situation because they've done that, that's when it becomes obsessive.
Yeah, and when I was upstairs in our bathroom, probably realising in this half an hour conversation that I've got OCD, I remember sitting on the toilet, and obviously our new bathroom, I'm proud of them tiles because I physically laid some of them myself, but I was counting the rows and counting up. I don't know, maybe it's to occupy myself, but I'll know that they're 3 across and 4 up before it goes on an angle, which is maybe a healthy version of it. But yeah, in 16 years, you wouldn't have known that that's my behaviour.
No.
So I'm going for some hypnotherapy after this.
Yes, that'd be good. But guys, hopefully everything's been slightly helpful with OCD. Anybody what needs to contact us, you're more than welcome to. But for now,
yeah, be safe.